Social media and websites might show you where you want to stay. Sales, they tell you when to book. But they rarely tell you where you actually are. I'm Megan, and yes, I talk about Sandals and Beaches resorts. The weekly sales, the promos worth booking, and the ones you can skip. Room categories, upgrades, insider tips, and how to actually get the best value for your vacation. But a resort doesn't exist in a vacuum. It sits on an island with a story, shaped by history, culture, food, people, and moments you'll never find on a booking page. On Islands Uncovered, we go beyond the resort gates. We talk about the islands and the people that Sandals and Beaches call home. The legends, the flavors, the unexpected stories hiding just beneath the surface. Because the best trips aren't just well priced, they're well understood. This is where smart booking meets storytelling. This is where vacations feel more meaningful. This is Islands Uncovered. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Islands Uncovered. This is the Beyond the Resort Monday edition of the podcast, where we take you off the Sandals properties into the islands and talk about an experience or a person or something about the history, folklore, legends that you can better get to know the islands when you go and travel to Sandals and Beaches properties. So I'm really excited today. We're going somewhere that we haven't been, which is kind of surprising because I feel like we've been doing this for a while now. We are going to St. Lucia. And as you know, Sandals has 3 properties in St. Lucia: Grand St. Lucian, Halcyon, and Latoc. And they are 3 resorts that are all in St. Lucia, but very different from each other. And the great thing about going to any one of the resorts in St. Lucia is if you stay at one, you can go to any of the other properties and enjoy all of the amenities at those properties as well. I have people do split stays in St. Lucia where they start off at one property and go to the other, again, just because the properties are so different and offer different things. So knowing this, if you have interest in booking a vacation to St. Lucia, to Sandals, it's very popular for honeymoons, please reach out. But where I'm taking you today is a place in St. Lucia where water bubbles up from the ground, heat rises, and it smells like rotten eggs. It's called Sulphur Springs, and it's nestled near the town of Soufrière on the southwestern coast of St. Lucia. So before we talk about what Sulphur Springs is today, let's talk about how it started. So in my research, I found that roughly 30-some thousand years ago, there was these enormous volcanic forces that collapsed part of St. Lucia's island crust. And it created a volcanic depression, which is known today as the Qualibou Caldera. That is the scientific name of the volcanic depression. And so you've got this shallow volcanic basin, and there is steam and hot springs that still escape from the earth underground. So what the locals call it, and what many people call it when they come to visit, is the world's only drive-in volcano. The road actually leads into the rim of this dormant volcanic field. So it is dormant. So when you think of a volcano, a lot of people think of, the towering cone with the glowing red lava pouring down. Obviously, that's an active volcano, but the volcano here is dormant, but it's not extinct. So that's why there's still stuff coming up from the ground. The last major eruption was about 40,000 years ago, the last major one. And then the last minor eruption was in 1766. So there has not been much activity in this volcano. Now, there is some seismic activity that continues beneath the surface. So that's why it's not completely gone, but it's definitely not active and is not considered something that's a threat. So you've got this dormant volcano, and you drive into a crater of the volcano where there are steam vents and hot mud pools that are bubbling. So temperatures in these pools can reach a boiling point, which, I mean, that's pretty hot. You're not going to go into water that is a boiling point. But why this is still happening is that underground, so roughly about 2 kilometers beneath your feet, there is all this heat from the molten rock, and the old magma chamber of this volcano is still down there. So it's so hot, and what it does is it warms the rainwater and the seawater that seeps down through the porous rock, because there are cracks and crevices and things that when it rains and the water come down, it can come through. So when water gets hot, it steams, and then you see that steam rising up through the ground. And the steam carries hydrogen sulfide gas, which is what gives it that horrible smell of rotten eggs. So that cannot be avoided if you go. But I have heard from the research that I did that when you go, it's pretty strong when you just get there, but then it tends to go away just because you get used to it. So we've got this steam that has this hydrogen sulfide gas in it. And what that does when it comes out of the ground is it deposits minerals like iron and calcium oxide and sulfur into the pools. Now, when there's any type of minerals in water, a lot of people tie this to being medicinal and good for healing. And it's no different for these sulfur pools. This goes way back to the 17th and 18th centuries. So the European powers, they're in here like all the other Caribbean islands. They are fighting over St. Lucia, but they were also fighting for control of these hot springs. Soufrière is a French word. It literally means sulfur mine. And the French settlers are the one who came in and named the town. They have a town square that I think I read was redone in about 2019. So it's definitely another cute area to go check out. But yeah, the French and the Europeans, they were fighting over these mineral baths and these geothermal fields. So in 1784, under the command of King Louis XVI of France, what he did is he had samples of the mineral waters sent back to France for analysis. He's like, look, I know there's something going on here, so I want to send these back to France, see what we're working with, and we can go from there. And with the testing, they were found to have properties similar to other famous European thermal baths. So that's why they began to think that they were medicinal baths, and you could use them to treat ailments like arthritis and various skin diseases. So the early spas were built for colonial troops and invalids, actually. They weren't anything like today where it's very much a tourist thing to go and see. And then in the 1800s, there was actually a sulfur mine that was operated by a company called Bennett and Wood, and they had a maximum production in about 1836, where they were exporting over 500 tons of sulfur. So as you can imagine, the exporting of this sulfur brought tons of money into the Soufrière area. And that is kind of how the foundation of that town was built. So let's jump to, if you were going to go and see this for yourself, what you can expect. When I think of St. Lucia, at least, I think of the Pitons. I think of a very green and lush landscape. And so just a heads up, when you drive into Sulphur Springs, it has been compared to looking like the surface of the moon, which by no means is green and lush. If you look up photos online, and I'll try to find some to post, the earth is cracking open. There's not grass because this is not conducive for grass to grow. So cracked open ground that's like mud, and then there's steam rising up through the cracks surrounded by mud baths and mineral baths. It's very different than the rest of the landscape, especially on the resorts. So it's definitely something worth going to see. When you arrive at Sulphur Springs, you're going to pull in. So if you haven't booked a tour and you rented a car and you're going to go for yourself, you can, from my understanding, just pay to go in on your own. I was not able to verify that on the website. So the easiest thing to do if you are at a Sandals property is to book a book a tour. Now, Island Roots has tours. There are other companies that do these tours as well, but typically you're going to pay a higher price that includes the admission, the transportation as well over to the springs, and then a guide to take you through it. But you pull in and you're going to start where the really boiling hot pools are. Now, these are not the pools that you are going to get in. It's hot. The water ranges from about 145 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is between 63 and 96 degrees Celsius. Some openings of these fumarole baths can reach up to 340 degrees Fahrenheit, 171 degrees Celsius. You are not getting in. They have an observation deck that they have built in the mid 1990s. So as the steam rises, that is what carries this horrible odor. So you're going to be standing on the observation deck and just able to look at the boiling lava pools. There's no lava in there. Boiling pools of water, smelling the delicious rotten eggs, and getting prepared for your bath. And what I read was that up until the mid 90s, so if you're listening to this and you have gone and seen this attraction in the 80s or early 90s, you could have potentially just walked right up to these tar-colored pits where the boiling water is. However, there was a unfortunate accident by a local tour guide named Gabriel, and he fell through the crust of the pit and he suffered second-degree burns. So now they have the observation deck. It's a little bit more restricted, probably a little bit more safe, and you have to stay a few hundred yards away. But you can still take a look into all of that same area. Okay, so after you're up on the observation deck, then your next part is you walk a few minutes away from the steam vents and the boiling pools, and you go to the slightly cooler, still hot pools. And that is where you can actually experience the pools themselves. So there are multiple pools. I think there's 4. You can choose whichever one you would like to go into. And all of the pools flow into each other. So there's pool, I'll just call it pool number 1. Pool number 1 comes right out of the hot spring, and that pool flows into pool number 2. Pool number 2 flows into pool number 3. Pool number 3 flows into pool number 4. I was reading about this online. Some people said, go in pool number 1. Because if you go into pool number 4, all of the other water from everybody else being in those other pools is flowing into your pool. If you go in 1, that's like the freshest, cleanest hot spring water. I get that. However, I also watched some videos where there were people trying to go into pool number 1, and it was too hot for them. One of the videos I watched, they tried pool 1 and pool 2, and they couldn't get in until they got to pool number 3. So, pro tip. When you go, you're going to just test it. Go in very slowly. Start at pool number 1. It might be too hot for you. That's okay. Find your perfect pool. Find the temperature that works best for you. But you can choose whichever one you'd like. So you go in first with no mud. You go clean. You soak for a little bit. And then you come out, and then they will give you this miracle mud, some people call it. And you get to slather it all over your body. This is the stuff that is supposed to detoxify your body, and it helps with the arthritis and your sore joints and your eczema. So you cover yourself in mud, and then you let that dry. It's like a lighter colored mud. And then they'll also give you a darker color mud. And they said in the videos that the darker color mud really doesn't do anything else besides just let you paint fun designs on the people that you're with. So if you look at pictures of people in the mud baths and the hot springs, you can see that a lot of them have designs that have been drawn onto their bodies by other people or themselves. So you get 2 different color muds to work into your body. And then after all of your mud is on and dry, then you choose your pool, go in and wash it off. And it's just supposed to be really invigorating, leave your skin really soft. Like I said, help with those sunburns from the beach. And it's like the ultimate natural spa treatment. Now, if you've just come in by yourself, I believe that your experience may end there. They do have showers on the property and changing rooms. So if you get out, you still feel like you want to rinse off, you certainly can. They have showers available. If you're doing a paid tour, there are some tours that will then take you to a nearby waterfall area that you can also rinse off. So if that's something you're interested in, I would certainly ask about what your tour includes. So, since I sell sandals in particular, let's just talk a little bit about where this is and how you can get to it. So, if you book this with Island Routes, they will provide the transportation. So, I think it's going to be about an hour 15 from Latok, hour and a half from Halcyon, and maybe slightly longer from the Grand. So, it is a little bit longer to get there, but it's still one of the most popular excursions that they have in St. Lucia. So I definitely suggest that you go check out the Sulphur Springs. If you do a private tour or something that, Island Routes can also personalize tours. You can do private tours with them. Perhaps you want to go to the Sulphur Springs and then go into Soufrière and see the town. You could customize something like that where you get to experience a little bit more of the local village and maybe do some shopping. There's certainly ways to tie in other things besides just a more touristy attraction. I also read that the tour was featured on The Bachelor. So they must have went there. I don't watch The Bachelor, but if you do, apparently on one season of The Bachelor, they went to Sulphur Springs. So there you go. I hope you have enjoyed hearing about a little bit more about the Sulphur Springs and the city of Soufrière, and just another amazing excursion that you can do outside of the three Sandals properties in St. Lucia. If you have interest in traveling to St. Lucia or just want to learn more about any of the three Sandals properties there, please reach out. My services are always free. I'm going to put all of the links to the excursions in the show notes today, so you can feel free to check those out, along with all of my social media handles. So reach out. I'd love to provide you with more information and help get you booked. Thanks for listening again. Come back on Wednesday where we'll do the weekly sandal sales report. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.